All right, welcome everybody. We're letting everybody in that is joining, but welcome to Celiac Uncensored. You'll see a lot of familiar faces here. We have Lauren, Caitlin, Sarah, and Janae, and of course myself. If you are new here, I'm Erin. I am a celiac dietitian. I'm a celiac myself. The founder of the celiac space, and we've kind of put together this meeting with other fabulous celiacs that are in our world. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Take it away.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Lauren Smith. I've had celiac disease in July, it'll be 8 years. So I've been living like this for quite a while. I also have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed with that 2 years ago. So a couple of big life changes in my life. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and my Instagram handle is @goodglutenfreegrub. And I also have a gluten-free education podcast that's available on Apple and Spotify.
Hi, I am Caitlin. I have had celiac disease for almost 17 years now. I am based out of Arizona and I love to eat out. So I share like how to eat out safely, how to order. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at eatglutenfreeaz.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. It's so nice to meet you. I am based in Chicago, Illinois, and I am obsessed with traveling the world. I got diagnosed with celiac disease in 2021, so we're almost at 3 years, and I love sharing everything gluten-free, travel specifically, and you can find me at Celiac Sarah Explores across all platforms.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited that we're doing this. I've always wanted to do something like this, so this is exciting. But I was diagnosed with celiac disease almost 10 years ago in July, like Lauren. And then my daughter actually got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and celiac disease almost 3 years ago. And that kind of changed everything for our family, because before it was kind of just like a me thing. Now it's like our whole family. When you have more than one person in your family, it kind of changes the dynamic. I run the page on Instagram called Clean Monday Meals. I'm not really on TikTok, but I'm on TikTok and Facebook. And then recently we launched gluten and dairy-free seasonings that is going really well.
Yeah, they're the best. I actually, Janae, just organized my whole seasoning cabinet. I have 2 drawers, and one is now just Clean Monday Meals, and the other ones that I don't really ever use it. So if you guys haven't tried Clean Monday Meals, check them out. Okay, so we're going to jump into your questions. A lot of you guys submitted ones. We had a ton. Some questions I've combined together, and the ones that we don't get to, I'll be sending out an email later next week with some answers. So with that, we're just going to kind of jump into it. We'll start with travel. What is the best travel tips for somebody with celiac? Sarah, you want to start? You're like our travel girl.
Yes, I have been to 26 countries with celiac disease in the past couple of years, and it's been so much fun. It's definitely different. I feel like I really had to learn how to travel with celiac. It wasn't going to be as easy. You just show up in a new place, a new destination, and you can do whatever. You really do have to plan it. But I really believe that if you spend time learning about the country or the new city that you're visiting and really intentionally planning your trip, to actually get a better experience out of it. So I've been able to really shift my mindset on that with traveling with celiac. It is harder, but you can do it. There's so many apps and resources out there online. I immediately went through a bunch of different blogs. There's so many creators that share really great information, and there's different apps like Find Me Gluten Free. I really love for finding gluten-free restaurants while traveling. And yeah, there's a lot more where that came from, but those are the basics.
So apps, Find Me Gluten Free, and do your research.
Yeah. Plan.
What other tips?
I would say preparing and bringing backup food for yourself just in case, because sometimes you'll get to a restaurant, especially if you're going to somewhere that's maybe smaller town or not big city, you could get to that place and they could have due to a family emergency, we're closed for the rest of the day. That can happen when you travel, and then you don't, what are you going to do if you're hungry and you can't get to the next place So kind of always having a stash of things that can tide you over until you can actually get to a destination that you can eat at. So having high protein snacks and things that are going to keep you full as a backup plan is always important too.
I literally carry a suitcase of food everywhere I go when I travel, just in case. Some trips I don't have to touch it, but like it's there for me and my heart to know that I have food if I need it. So I think just always being prepared enough to have the things that you need, but hopefully you don't always need them, but planning to have it.
Yeah,
I will say, like, planning does help, but I might be the rare one who I don't ever pack a suitcase of snacks. I don't bring like meals with me. I don't typically stay in a place with a kitchen. I usually have like an emergency protein bar. And then sometimes I'll bring a loaf of bread just because when you're traveling to other countries and states, like that's the one thing that they never have is like if you want a bun or toast or something with your meal. But I will say, like, if you don't want to prepare, like, while it does help, and I think that for some people, they absolutely have to, it makes them feel better. There is the side too that, like, if you don't want to, there are ways to travel without it. Like, there have been many times, like, we just stop at a grocery store when we get there, or I'm a firm believer of like when you go into a restaurant, most places can get you a chicken breast. You know, like any restaurant can probably get you a chicken breast. It might not be exactly what you want, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my style more so. Like I just figure it out as we go. Yeah, most places you can get a baked potato. That's actually one of the questions as we transition into dining out. Because I think a lot of the travel part is mastering how to dine out, right? And if you are like if you in your own city aren't used to asking the questions when dining out or understanding cross contact or like those type of things, it makes travel really hard. More like harder than it has to be, I guess. So one of the questions was from Crystal, best tips for eating at a restaurant with limited options. So like I think if you go to like an Italian restaurant, what are you gonna order? If they don't have a gluten-free menu or like those kind of things, what would you guys suggest?
I think it all really depends on like what's on the menu, you know. I don't know, I guess I try really hard not to be put in those situations where there are limited options, but like sometimes you have no choice, right? It's your family or your friends and you're just tagging along to something. And so I think any source of protein, you can usually have them grill for you with no seasonings, no sauce. You could do a salad with balsamic vinaigrette and olive oil. Usually they can give you a side of veggies, like Erin said, a baked potato. Sometimes when I'm looking at the restaurant, there's nothing that I'd even want to eat there. Like I already know it's so limited and I'm just going to eat ahead of time or I'll bring my food with me. I'll bring my food with me and I'll eat it at the restaurant. Usually if I'm at a place where there are no options, I'm in a huge group. The server doesn't even notice that I have my own sandwich or my own meal.
Something I would say too that it's taken me many years to get to this place mentally because I am the queen of FOMO. I like to eat the same thing that everyone else is eating. I like to feel included. I don't like to feel like I'm the odd man out. And that's just my own personal preference. So when I'm going to something where I know everyone's going to be eating a certain type of food, I'm like, I will bring that same thing. Like, I know, Caitlin, you're like, I'll just bring a chicken breast and some rice and I'm fine. And for me, I'm like, no, I want to eat the same thing that everyone else is eating, or else I feel like this sense of sadness. Like, I still feel that way sometimes. And so I've had to like mentally be okay with having the thought process of I'm here because I love these people, not because I need to eat the food. Like I'm here because I want to participate in community, in friendship, in family, and food doesn't have to be involved in order to feel the love that I have for my family. So like also having a mindset shift too can be helpful. Like if you can't actually eat at a restaurant, being okay going into it, being like, I'm fine to just get a drink and I'm happy to be with the people that I love.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say too is I wasn't super great at it in the beginning and I'm getting better. And also my husband's getting way better for me, but advocating for yourself and making sure that if you have to say, can I speak to the chef? And most times they're going to come out and talk to you. They're going to tell you what they can make for you. They're going to give you the options. And honestly, they want to help you. I have had very few experiences where someone's been mean to me and like we have nothing that you can eat. So I feel like just making sure that you or your spouse is saying like, okay, but what exactly can I have? Especially if you're worried about cross-contamination in the kitchen in the back where it's a kitchen that there's a lot of other things. Bring out somebody that can talk to you so you feel like you can eat there and that you're certain that it's going to be okay.
And I think thinking too, like they might not be a celiac expert. And so anytime that I've gotten somebody that says like, we can't cook for you or like, we don't know, it's they're fearful of making you sick or like they just aren't educated in gluten-free. So their default is like, we can't help you. But if you can coach them through it and put on like I'm the celiac expert hat and you're like, these are the things I can eat, then usually they're more likely like I can eat potatoes and chicken and any seasoning and like walk them through it. Any chef is going to be like, fine, I get to cook something different. That's off menu. Like they'll be willing to work with you. So if they say we can't make anything for you here, usually that's just them being fearful and they just need to be coached a little bit more. My experience. Yeah. Let's see. Abby asks, best way to navigate cross contact at a restaurant. She always tells the server, I have an allergy to gluten, but getting them to understand cross contact is so much more difficult. She feels like a Karen. I'm always polite and tip well, but last time I ordered fish, it came out with couscous. What am I supposed to do? Or what do you guys do? So how do you kind of navigate like the verbiage of talking to staff?
I think for me, knowing how food is prepared is the most helpful thing when it comes to avoiding cross contact. Like if you know how a burger is made in the kitchen, if it's cooked, like our burgers and buns cooked on the same flat top, like how the food is prepared, that helps you figure out what questions to ask them, like fries, always in a fryer. That's how you know, oh, is it a dedicated fryer, So it just really depends on, like, do you cook at home? Or if the dish you're looking at the restaurant, maybe look up a recipe ahead of time online and just see, okay, what are maybe some of the ingredients that might be in this type of food I'm looking to order commonly. So then you can be like, oh, does this actually have soy sauce in it? Or can you use gluten-free soy sauce? So I think knowing how to cook things gives you so much power when you're talking to them. But I also think too, like, don't be afraid to be a Karen, like you didn't ask for celiac disease. Like, I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, yes, please make me be gluten-free. So, like you didn't ask for this. And most people, in my experience, are totally understanding of your allergy. I think I've had one or two really bad experiences where I don't know what is going on in their life, but they were not willing to help me. But other than that, I eat out a lot. I probably eat out 2 or 3 times a week. And most of the time, I can guarantee you, you're not a burden to them. So don't be afraid to ask all the questions that make you feel safe.
Let me chime in on that really quick. I will say, it is easier said than done. So if you feel scared to advocate for yourself, I will tell you, as my personality, I'm an empath. It's very hard for me to say sometimes, like, I can't have that or this. Obviously, I don't want to get sick. But if it's hard for you to advocate for yourself, maybe ask your loved one to help you, because it's much easier for them to kind of say something and you feel more empowered for them to help you through that. So if you're like me and it was hard in the beginning to even say something, it's like I would literally be the person at the table like, it's okay, I just won't eat. I'm fine. I don't need to eat anything. So if that's you, just make sure that you ask for help, because Kevin now will advocate for me before I even do it myself.
I think so. We all have loved ones. I'll say it for myself, and I'm curious what you guys think. Dylan is the first person to speak up for me at a restaurant. Like if I don't say something or I'm like, he's like, tell me you have a gluten allergy, or he'll just, he'll say it. Like he's the first person to look at the menu and do those things. And we've trained him well, but what do you guys think? Kind of like, how do you navigate it with your significant others or friends or whoever you're eating with?
For me personally, I'm like you. I'm like, Jared is the first person to be like, oh, I looked at the menu already. And like, I saw that there was like, I feel like I have a super supportive spouse. And if you are in a position and you don't have a supportive spouse, unfortunately, it is up to you to educate them. Like they're not like, it is our job as the person with celiac disease to educate our close circle of friends and family so that we can rely on other people so that the burden's not so heavy on us. So take the time to have a hard conversation with your mom, with your, with your significant other, with your roommates, whoever it is that you're spending the most time with. it's such a big part of living with this disease is making sure that the people in your circle are educated properly so that they can help you if needed. Like there have been a handful of times when I'm like, I literally have to go pee. And when I leave to go pee, that's when the server comes. But I know that Jared can do that. Like I know that he can order for me and he knows all the questions to ask. One, because he's watched me do it, but he also knows he's seen me terribly sick. He's seen me have vacations ruined because I've gotten sick. So he's like, I don't want you to get sick. So of course I'm going to ask the questions for you. So it's up to us to educate the people in our lives.
Absolutely. Having a great support system is so key. I've had KJ, who's my fiance, help out with ordering, and my friends as well. And I did have to educate them. And it's so out of love from myself and them when they help me. And I will say that I feel like as a newer diagnosis person, it does get easier. Like I was really scared at first and I really relied maybe on KJ too much at that point. And he was like, you can do this. Like, and he really found the balance of motivating me. Like, I can help you here, but this is your life. So you need to develop this skill. And it gets so much easier. 2.5 years in, I feel way more confident ordering out. And you just get used to it. And back to like ordering, I feel like this past weekend, especially, we're dining out a lot. And I am a bit aggressive when I'm asking questions because I want to make sure I don't get sick, but I do it with such kindness and a smile on my face and with such compassion for the server if they don't know. And after one interaction, I felt bad. I was like, oh, I think I overwhelmed them. That was a little awkward. But I was like, you know what? I approached it with kindness. I wasn't a quote Karen. I was just doing it out of the goodness of my heart and it was very kind. So I think if you rely on that too, you get less scared about ordering out.
I will add too that if you don't have a supportive loved one that can help you order, you can always write it down. Like that's something I did a lot when I was first diagnosed and I was having trouble ordering. Like I would either call so I didn't have to order face to face with someone and I would ask them all my questions over the phone, or I'd write down every single question I had on a piece of paper and I would just hand it to the server and be like, can you answer these for me? And so that I didn't have to like deal with the whole interaction. But like to Sarah's point, it does get so much easier the longer you've had it and then the more you practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, practice is huge, which takes place over time, but also it's something you have to be intentional with. You know, I've had clients that have been celiac for 10 years and they've eaten out 3 times. You know, or I've had clients that are celiac for a year and they eat out every week. And so, you know, the repetition is huge and the beginning is hard for sure. It never gets easier. You still have to ask the questions, but you like the scripts you ask become a little bit easier. Like I always think of like, when you're in grade school and you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance, it's like you have to read it, you know, from a thing. It's like check, and it's like really awkward. But then by the time you're saying it every day, it's just like natural. Like it's just like something you kind of spit out. And so, you know, I have certain things that I order. If I order fajitas, like I just, it doesn't really matter where it is, but I know what questions to ask. I know how to order it. So that kind of comes with repetition. Let's see. Okay, this is kind of fun one from Madison. How do you respond to a restaurant charging you more for gluten-free food when all they had to do was remove something? For example, she was charged $3 to remove granola.
What?
I've never heard of that one, but I think it just
I've never heard of that. That's shocking.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Or when it's like pizza dough. I mean, that's the things I remember, right? I've never heard it for being removed, so I don't know how to help. I've never been, I mean, generally speaking, we're charged more for everything and it's really, really dumb. I get it, but I've never been charged for removing something, so that's crazy. I'm sorry that happened here on this call. I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
I would 100% be a Karen in that situation. I'd be like, there is no way I'm paying for that.
Not wild, but yeah, I think we all pay for more. The other part, and Caitlin, you would have a good, when you want to order a chicken breast, right? And you're like, we don't have that on the menu. We can't do that for you. How do you get them to price that for you? You know what I mean? Because usually that's the kickback that I've gotten where they're like, we can't do that because it's not in their POS system. Like, how do you walk them through that you want something off menu, basically?
Yeah, so that actually happens quite a bit. They'll be like, oh, we can't just do a grilled chicken breast or whatever. And I'm like, but you can do grilled chicken on a salad. And they're like, yeah. So like, I'm like, so you could do a side of grilled chicken on a salad. And they're like, correct. And I'm like, so can you do the side of grilled chicken minus the salad? And they're like, no. And then so usually I'm like, why not? And like for point of sale, I think almost every single time they have to get the manager. And it's, I will say it's either chicken breast is anywhere from $4 to $7, like seven being on the high end, but most of the time it's like one of the cheapest things like they'll give you is like it's $4, $5 when you're at like a dive bar and there's nothing else for you to have other than a chicken breast. But usually if they say no, like and they keep saying no over and over, I'll just be like, hey, can I speak to the manager? Because there has to be a way for this to happen. And I'm not paying for the salad or I'm not paying for the burger with no bun and no fries just to get the patty. Like I'm not doing that. And so usually the manager is pretty helpful and they'll figure it out. I don't know what they do on their end to make that happen, but I've never had someone straight up say no and it not get resolved.
I usually say like, can you give me chicken breast but charge me for French fries? Or like, I try and give them a suggestion so they like know, because I've been a server and sometimes you're just like, I'm 16 years old. I don't know how to do this thing, you know? So I try and like give them suggestions, but yeah, that's always a tricky one.
I've
Okay.
eaten out. I was just gonna say I've eaten out several times with Caitlin, and she is like the queen of like, no, this is what I want, and like, can you make that happen? Like she has no fear in being like so. She's just a super great advocate for herself, and I've dined out with her so many times, and I've learned so much from her every time I've dined out. And like when you are friends with other people with celiacs, you know, and you eat out together, it's very like heartwarming to go to dinner with all of your friends that eat gluten-free, because you get to watch how they order and you get to watch how different people do things, and you learn new skills when you do that. So I think that's also fun if you can find a community wherever you live to learn from other people who have celiac disease at a restaurant specifically can be helpful.
Yeah. What is this ties into restaurant stuff and cross contact, which we'll transition into. But what is like a meal that you guys order regularly, and how do you ask for it with the right questions? So like a burger, how do you ask the right cross contact questions, or like what does that look like for you?
Who wants to start?
You.
I order fajitas a lot. Like that's one of my go-tos, because I'm like, it's grilled meat, it's grilled veggies, it's corn tortillas, and especially at like a Mexican place, I can find fajitas typically to be a safe thing for me. So I always just ask like, are the corn tortillas made in-house, or are they store-bought? Ask questions about the tortillas, and then ask if they're warmed on the same flat top. And if they are, can they heat their corn tortillas on a separate pan? 9 times out of 10, though, the fajitas are all made separately in a different station than flour tortillas. So I feel like with Mexican food specifically, I can always be safe with fajitas.
I will say, because French fries are my favorite, French fries are hard because you always have to ask if they are in a shared fryer. And I think when I first got diagnosed, I didn't know that. I was unaware of, it took me maybe a year to figure that out. There's just so much you're learning when you're first diagnosed. And it's like, wait, I can't eat French fries that are shared with something else. I had no idea. So anything that's fried in a location, you always just have to make sure that the thing you want that should be gluten-free, like French fries, are not in a shared fryer. That's one of the main questions I'm always asking restaurants.
I'm a French fry girl too, but I will say like anytime like I can find gluten-free pasta out and about, like that's what I'll try and order. And so I think typically with pasta, I ask like, is it cooked in fresh water? Because half the time it's one big pot of water, they're dumping all the pasta in there. And, you know, to avoid cross contact, you really don't want your gluten-free pasta to be in that contaminated water. So if they cook all the pasta in the same water, I'll ask if they can do like a fresh separate pot of water, or if they can clean the pot and do new water. Typically, all of the toppings are fine, like marinara sauce or whatever, but then I'll just make sure if it has like any sort of sausage, that the sausage is gluten-free, or whatever meat is in it is gluten-free as well.
I also love, I think we mentioned this earlier, a bunless burger. It's very easy to do. Just making sure that it's on a separate stovetop, that the buns don't get toasted, make sure there's no cross contact there. But that's definitely another go-to.
I am a big fish person, and we don't eat fish at home because my husband hates it. So I usually get that out. And fish is also very easy because it's raw meat, and so they're not going to be cooking raw meat where they're cooking buns or other gluten-free stuff. So I just make sure it's not like crusted in anything funny. And then I either get rice on the side, a baked potato, or just like some kind of grilled veggies. I usually keep it like pretty easy, naturally gluten-free. I'm surprised you two are fry, not surprised. I love that you guys are fry lovers. I've never had French fries at a restaurant. Like since Big Blue.
I like look for fries in particular. I'm like, oh, does this place have fries? We'll go there.
Freaking French fries.
So funny. I've never even crossed my mind to like, I mean, I know to ask about it, obviously, but never done
Oh, I
it.
love French fries.
Same.
Never
I'll
done
pick
it.
one over the other just because like maybe the food is not as good, but they have fries. So
Yeah.
like I'll
Fries.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, how do you explain cross contact to friends and family? Like if there's somebody's brand new to cross contact, how would you explain it to them?
Someone gave me, oh, sorry.
You go.
Someone gave me a really good analogy recently, and I wish I had known this before I had to explain it to my friends and family. But someone compared it to dealing with raw chicken. Like you wouldn't want to touch raw chicken and then touch everything else. So it's the same way with anything of gluten. So you could use that. The other way I've described it is like just not getting into all the details. If anyone has tips on that, please, I'm excited to hear you share. But just explaining that it's just a crumb. Like I could use the same toaster and just a crumb will get me sick. And I'll use a bit of a humor route. I'll be like, you know, if we're traveling on a trip together, like we're all sharing the same bathroom, like we don't want any issues here. Like it's just a crumb. So really reminding them that it's the smallest amount that could touch it is cross contact. It's not good.
Yeah, that the chicken analogy is good because you wouldn't prepare, like you wouldn't use the same cutting board that you just cut raw chicken on and then prepare, you know, like a sandwich on it, right? It would need to be cleaned in between. And I think something that some people get really stressed out about is kitchen sharing, which, you know, depending on your family's needs, you can kitchen share or you can have 100% gluten-free home. There is not one way that's better than the other. It's just whatever works best for your family and your home. But whoever is sharing that home needs to understand cross contact so that you aren't getting sick all the time at home, because home should be a safe place for you. It should be a place where you feel confident eating and you're not getting sick on a regular basis. So if you are getting sick on a regular basis at home, it probably is due to cross contact if you're sharing a kitchen with people who are eating gluten. So again, education is such a big part of cross contact in your home and outside the home. The people that you're spending your time with need to know, you know, what cross contact looks like, where it happens in the most places, like toasters, and not sharing the same pots and pans without being washed in between, you know. And we know that like running something through the dishwasher gets something clean, and you can use the same kitchen supplies. Now, everyone's going to have their own personal preference, and that's going to be up to you, and you use your own discretion of what you want. I think that's really important, not to compare what another celiac does, because like I know that like I have a 100% gluten-free home because that's my preference, because I get sick from cross contact so easily, and my kids are so little that like if they're eating gluten, they're touching everything. They're touching my face. They're, you know, it's just like kids are just harder to do. But I'm like, maybe when my kids are teenagers, we'll have a shared home when I can actually trust them to clean up after themselves, and maybe have a dedicated counter that's for the gluten and this one's for gluten-free. But having dedicated spaces in your kitchen can be helpful too, and dedicated appliances.
How much detail do you guys go into it? Because I know for me, it really depends on the person. Like if it's somebody just cooking for me once, you know, I might just like, I don't know. I don't feel like I need to go in as much detail. Or if it's somebody that I know is going to be cooking for me, like when I got married, I know that my sister-in-law is going to cook for me a bunch. So like I felt the need, like I felt like it was worth me explaining more details to her. But how do you guys navigate that with each person? Because I know a lot of people feel like if they're eating at somebody's house, they need to like go through the cabinets and make sure they've cleaned everything. Like how do you guys kind of navigate it for different scenarios?
I feel like the people I talk to the most about it is family members. That's like where I go to if I'm going to go eat anywhere. My mom and my mother-in-law and sister-in-laws that cook, they know exactly what I can and can't have, and they're really, really great to accommodate. Oh, and it's like they'll even send me pictures. Can you have this? Can you have this? And so they're helpful in accommodating to that. But because I was able to sit down with them and explain, like, I get sick, this is how sick I get. And I don't know, this is going to go off topic for 5 seconds, but I feel like this is there. I saw in the meeting chat that somebody asked this question. So I'm going to just throw it out there because someone said, people don't take me seriously. And it's really hard because they think like, oh, is that little bit going to make you sick? Or they get those weird questions about, oh, is that really going to hurt you? I've gotten those a million times. I think one of the ways that my doctor described it best to me is, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me and it's awfully heartbreaking, but celiac, once your intestine breaks down so much, it actually can cause a lot more issues like stomach cancer and your bone density. And there's a lot more to celiac disease. So even telling them those scarcity things where it's like, actually, you may not see that I get sick right away, but if I continue to eat gluten over and over again, this is what it does to me. And this is how it will affect me for the rest of my life. And I think
lean into scaring them a little bit for sure.
Yeah, because sometimes they don't really get it, but like the reality is like it can harm us for forever and it could kill us, So I think people need to understand that, and not that you have to say it in a mean way, but a loving way that they understand like this can actually really, really affect me.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do too is because I kind of get tired of explaining it to people, even though that is my job. If, let's say I'm going to my aunt's house to cook and I'm going to be new there, I'll have my mom explain it to her, right? Because my mom and my aunt have a better, like they know each other more. And then it's not just coming from me. Like, then it's like, oh, two people are saying how serious this is. Same thing, I'll have my husband explain it to other people so that it isn't just like I'm on this diet or like, it's like a medical thing that everybody is in the loop with. And usually other people are going to explain it in a more scary way, I guess, or like, I don't know, explain it to make it feel more severe. And usually they'll go into more detail. They what?
They want to protect you.
Totally. Yeah. They want to protect you. So they're going to go into a lot more detail because they're not tired of talking about it. Where sometimes we have fatigue over like explaining what cross contact is all the time.
I have another thought to share as well. A lot of the times I think we're scared to educate because we're afraid of like people being annoyed of us, right? And finding us to be inconvenient and being high maintenance. But again, 9 times out of 10, there is this always 1% chance that someone's going to be annoyed, and whatever. That's fine. They can be annoyed with us, but at least we did our part in educating. I had a neighborhood like potluck barbecue a couple of weeks ago, and one girl said, I'll take charge of all of the meat, but can we use your grill? And I said, yes, that's fine. Can you tell me like what you're planning on making? And she's like, we're going to do like burgers, hot dogs, and some skewered chicken and like veggies. And I said, are you planning on marinating the veggies? And she said, yes. And I said, can you send me a picture of the marinade that you're planning on using? And she sent me a picture of like a Pinterest recipe, and it was all safe for me. And I just said, thank you so much. She said, I made sure I found a gluten-free one. She barely knows me. She knows I'm gluten-free. We're just neighbors down the street. Like, she doesn't know me well, but like in this group chat that we had about the barbecue, I had said like, I'm going to be bringing gluten-free dessert and I'm going to be doing whatever. And so she said, oh, do I need to do this gluten-free? So like me just speaking up and saying I'm bringing a gluten-free dessert, it made her go like, oh, I'm going to look for a gluten-free marinade. And at the barbecue, I just thanked her and I just said, thank you so much for making this gluten-free. And she just said, oh, she's like, of course I'm happy to. She's like, we're learning. Like, she's like, we're just learning this stuff and we're happy to accommodate for you. And it's like nice to learn this stuff because I'm sure there will be more people in our lives who are gluten-free. And so most people are like, sure, like we'll do whatever we can to make sure it's safe for you. You just have to be the one to bring it up and not just assume that everyone knows what to do.
Yeah.
Also, go. You go.
I was gonna say, I want to ask you a question before you have to jump off. Do you have time still? Or are you jumping off?
Me?
Yeah. Do you have your daughter's answer?
I'm good. We're good.
Okay.
I got it. So let me ask me a question and then I'll go back.
Okay, I was gonna ask because we've kind of all shared like how we navigate our own cross-contact dining out, eating at other people's homes. But what do you do for your daughter that is gluten-free when she's not under your care? As I would imagine, you know, as a teen, it was harder for me being diagnosed. Like, how does she navigate it, or how do you help her navigate it? How do you teach her to navigate it? How is that different as a mom of a celiac versus being a celiac?
Yes, a mom of a celiac changed my whole entire world. By the way, it was when I was doing it without her for the 7 years without her, I would eat alone and then I would make my family gluten food for like the first 5 years of my diagnosis because it felt easier to meal prep and have my own little container. I would eat my own food and then I would cook the family normal food. Well, then when Colby got diagnosed, we sat down with the whole entire family and we're like, okay, so this is a whole family thing now. We are all going to eat gluten-free because Colby's not going to feel left out. It's much easier as a mom of a child to do that than to do it to advocate for yourself in that regard. So as soon as Colby went gluten-free, I will say we do have gluten in our home. I have a family of 7 and it's very expensive. So I do have normal bread for my family and other things, but every meal that I make is gluten-free. My family eats all gluten-free. Navigating outside of the home, I am always extra prepared all the time. My daughter's in cheer and she is always on the go. And so we are packing a lot of food with us all the time. But she is also really, really good at advocating for herself and asking questions when she is with people. She'll text me, hey, my friends are going to this restaurant. I know I can't eat there. Like, what should I do? And it's either I DoorDash or something. Teenager, it's hard. It's a different world right now with teenagers. But I will DoorDash her something. I will leave and I will bring her something if I need to. It's just we're in the process of trying to figure it out and navigate it. But if we're going to a party that, you know, it's pizza, I bake a pizza like Lauren. I don't want her to feel different. I want her to eat the same food that everybody else is eating. So I will try my very, very best to accommodate what everyone else is having so she doesn't feel left out. And then I always have extra snacks in my freezer, like cakes, cookies, a whole stash of things. So if she's going to a party or going to an event, she'll bring this frozen thing that will defrost by the time she's ready to eat it so that she can also enjoy a treat with everybody else. Because I will say, and this will lead into the next thing I was going to say, and it took me a little bit of time to navigate and figure this out, but people don't know what they don't know. If they do not have celiac disease, they don't get it. They don't understand what we're going through, and you cannot put that pressure on them to understand what we're going through because they will not understand it. Just like I don't get how to do technology and computers and like all the back end stuff of that. Like somebody that's super, you know, great at that, I will never understand how they do that. So I think we have to also go into things with a little bit more grace for people and understanding that they don't want to hurt you. They want to support you and they want to love you. For the most part, everybody wants to, but they don't live your life 100% of the time like you do. We always have to constantly think about food. That's probably on our mind more than anything. And so I think we have to just be better about giving people grace because I think they do want to help us more than we think that they do. So does that help?
Yeah. And I think putting yourself in the mindset of like, if somebody were to come to my home and say like, I'm a vegetarian, if I'm cooking something for people, it's going to be meat. It's going to like, my husband's probably grilling like, but if somebody told me they're a vegetarian, I would go out of my way 100%. I would say, do you eat meat alternatives? Would you eat a meat burger? Do you like certain brands? Is this something you would eat? Like, and part of that is because one, I'm a dietitian, so I know what vegetarian, you know, I understand that stuff. But even if I didn't, I would go out of my way. If a guest came to my house and said, hey, I need 4 pillows on my bed, I would absolutely go out of my way to do that. And so other people want to do that for you and help accommodate. They just might not know how. And so being able to coach them through it is huge.
I will say like my experience is more like your daughter, Janae, like Colby's, because I was diagnosed so young when I was 12 that I didn't have to explain contact to anybody. I just grew up with all of them having to learn it for me. And so like I had a mom who was learning about it and explaining it to others. And then like as my mom was learning about it, she was teaching my grandparents and my dad and my siblings. And so like how things worked in the house. And so I feel like when I do family events and stuff, I don't really have to explain it to them because I grew up with having a mom who was so good about it and was so good about like at school when there's pizza parties, she would always drop me off a gluten-free pizza, or she'd have those snacks in the freezer to be like, here's your donut. And so now when I explain it, it's mostly to friends, but I even feel like when my friends come out to eat with me, they see me ask all these questions to a server and they're like, oh man, she takes this really seriously. And so even if I've only like, even if it's like my husband's friends and I've met them once, they'll be like, oh, we have a gluten-free option. Or even this summer, I'm going to a wedding in Italy for some of my husband's friends. We've hung out maybe twice. They're like, oh, we've already asked for you for gluten-free options. They're going to prepare it safely. And I've hung out with them twice. So I think too, like showing how you order or like when you're out to dinner and like asking those questions and like you're being serious about it, other people will take you seriously. Like she's not messing around. Like this isn't a joke. This is their like their life and their health.
I think it's so cool. I've had so many experiences with people showing how much they love you through food. Like it gives them the ability, and I think it really makes them happy. I was at a wedding maybe a month ago, and it was from one of my good friends, but he's the groom. And so he basically just showed up to that wedding. He didn't know what they were cooking or anything. But the obviously bride and groom served their self. And then he came over to me and was like, hey, while I was getting my food, I asked them what's gluten-free. You can have these, and these, and like brought me his plate to show me like, this is what it looks like, you know, because then I can kind of like piece it together. And it's like his day, like, you know, and so it's really cool just seeing like different ways people care for you through gluten if you allow them to. So, I want to ask this question in the middle because I don't want to end on this note, but does celiac ever make you feel sad?
Not every day, but a lot, yes.
Yeah, not every day. That's not every day, but frequently enough that there are times that it makes me feel sad. But I will say that from 2016, from when I was diagnosed till now, my life is so much more rich and fulfilling. Like it's just gotten better and better and better and better as every day passes and I learn how to do it better and the world learns how to do gluten-free better. So there is sadness involved, but not near as much as it was in the beginning.
But I also think it's okay to be sad. Like you can mourn the loss of like being able to eat the way that everybody else does. And that's what I tell my daughter all the time. When she's having a moment, we have a moment together and we cry together and then we like talk it out and then we move on and we like our day's better, right? But like it's real. We're dealing with a really hard thing and most of the world doesn't get it. And so take that time to like cry and let it out because we have to finish that cycle of emotions. Sometimes you just gotta let that emotion out, cry it out, and then be okay with it and move on. And I feel like it helps.
How many of us have cried in a restaurant?
Airport.
Yeah, I've definitely cried in a restaurant bathroom, sometimes a little bit at the table, but
yeah. I haven't, but I've left. Like I'll just be like, you guys home.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I wanted to share that question because I get a lot of people are newly diagnosed and they're like, I'm sad. And, you know, we share a lot of positivity on social media and it's easier for us because we've been doing it for a while and we have practice. And, but I think it's important for everybody to know, like, it still sucks. Like, and it's okay to suck. It still can be sad. It's okay to be sad. It can still be hard. It's okay to be hard. Feel those emotions, but just don't live there. Like, you know, you shouldn't be feeling like celiac sucks, it sucks, it sucks. So I want to flip that. What is the biggest thing you learned from celiac or how has it been a blessing to you? Like, I want everyone to get that piece.
And I kind of want to jump in here to talk about my mental health journey through my celiac disease diagnosis. Definitely was not easy for me. I saw someone in the comments quickly say grief, and I definitely had to grieve my past lifestyle. I was a Division I athlete, moving around my body, getting diagnosed with a chronic illness felt really extreme. And it felt like I had an identity crisis, also young 20s. There was just a lot of growth going on there. So I actually started weekly therapy and that helped me so much and just was able to talk through what this diagnosis meant to me. And I feel like that does show me that I was able to learn about myself more through this diagnosis and really be intentional about my life and my mindset and just how I spend my days and how I want to spend my life. So I will say that you got to take care of your mental health. And I'm a huge proponent of therapy, highly recommend it to anyone. And that celiac disease can be so powerful. It sucks sometimes. I cry at restaurants. I cried at the airport recently. It happens, but I feel like I'm able to live such a fulfilling and fruitful and intentional life through it that it makes it worth it.
I would say for me, I've learned to be more compassionate, of a more compassionate person, because I want people to understand me, and I have this disability, if you will, but also with type 1 diabetes as well. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. Like Janae said, it's like, unless somebody has it themselves, it's hard for them to understand. But now that I have two food related diseases, I'm so much more compassionate as a person in when other people have whatever disability it may be. It's made me more compassionate because I'm like, I don't know fully what they're going through, but I'm sure what they're going through is hard. So it's just taught me to be more compassionate. And it's also taught me to like be really conscious of what I put into my body. I read every label of everything that I eat, and I just have become so much more conscious of like ingredients and real food and nourishing my body, which I feel like I wouldn't have ever, maybe I would have gone down that path. I don't know. But I feel like because of both of those diseases, I'm very much like, I am very conscious of what I eat. And I'm happy that I have that knowledge because it's taught me a lot about food and nourishment.
That's the same for me. I feel like I am a much healthier person because I have read every single food label there is out there. You know, you're at the grocery store reading them all the time. And I think without celiac, the food I would choose to eat today is probably a lot of fast food. Not that that's bad, but probably not great for every meal. And so I do think I choose like more healthy whole food choices, lots of protein, fruits and vegetables. And like on another note, it's like it's given me a lot of confidence. You know, I went from the girl who was 12, whose mom ordered for me for every single meal because I was too scared to do it. And even in college, I felt like I struggled to do it. And now I'll go in anywhere and I'll ask you any question. And I think the confidence is like it has given me to advocate for myself in front of other people is huge. And I don't think I would have had that without having celiac.
I mean, everyone's kind of said exactly how I would feel as well. I think another thing, going back to people not understanding, it's given me a lot more compassion of like, you don't know what anybody's going through. And you can look at me on the outside and you have no idea what trials I'm going through. So I just have a lot more compassion for people because no one, like if someone looks at me, they don't know we have celiac disease, right? They don't understand the hurt sometimes that we're going through. And even with my daughter, like people don't understand that. And so I think I've flipped that to everybody else in the world. Like we're all dealing with really, really hard things. And I think we just need to give more compassion and love to everybody. And that's something that has been like in the beginning, I feel like I was maybe more a little bit, well, why don't they understand? Like this is a huge life change for me. Why don't they understand that I'm going through this? And I've flipped that now. I've given just a lot more compassion to other people because they're going through really hard in their life. It's okay if they don't always show up for me, but I'm super, super grateful when they do show up for me because it makes my heart so happy. I will say another thing that it has taught me is how little of gluten-free things are in our school systems and airports and so many of the places that it's like it's taught me that I want to be a better advocate for people that are struggling because of my daughter. Because when I had it, I didn't really understand, like when I had it before her, I never looked at the school system, right? I didn't understand that was a big deal for kids. Like that didn't cross my mind until I had a kid that had to go through it. And so when you're watching your kids suffer, you want to make changes for everybody that's going through that. So it makes me feel like I want to have treats for all the kids at school that are gluten-free. And I show up way more now in those instances than I ever did before.
Yeah, I think yes to all of those things. I would add, if I'd add something different, I think it helps me have like better relationships with people because it makes you have a deep, like when you share a meal with somebody, you have a deep relationship. But when they see a more intimate part of your life, like you have to ask these questions and you have to share these things, it can bond you, I guess, a little bit more. And in some ways, it has helped me be more reliant on other people because I have to ask them questions. How did he make this thing? What are the ingredients? And otherwise, I might not have to have those interactions with people. So it kind of forces me out of my bubble to have those conversations. So I think that's kind of one thing for sure. Let's see. How do you know? Okay, we're taking a hard turn. How do you know when something glutened you versus having a stomach bug or a cold? And I will say this first. There are over 200 symptoms of celiac disease. Everybody has different symptoms. GI symptoms are not the only symptoms. Some people are completely asymptomatic. What I hate, my pet peeve is when I see people on Facebook groups, they're like, does anybody else get a paper cut? And then everybody comments like, oh, I get paper cuts all the time. And so then people think getting a paper cut is a celiac disease issue when like you just asked celiacs. So of course they all commented. So keep that in mind for those listening. When we share our symptoms, your symptoms might be completely different. So with that, the difference between getting glutened and like getting sick or, having other symptoms.
I mean, when I get gluten, I just know I'm freaking glutened. Like it's instant for me. So, and mine's all stomach GI related. And the craziest thing is my daughter is completely opposite. We don't know instantly when she gets gluten. It's a couple hours later because she gets a very severe migraine. And the migraine gets to the point where it makes her want to throw up. Sometimes she throws up, sometimes she doesn't. So it is crazy that both of us are completely different. So I notice immediately hers is like, it's kind of sometimes not, I wouldn't say if scary is the right word, but it's like, I don't actually know for sure what all the times that she's getting gluten, but I do know when I'm getting gluten because I can feel it instantly. So I know it's hard.
I will say, so when I was a child and I would get gluten, my number one symptom was a migraine. As an adult, and if there's any dudes on this call, maybe this is TMI, but for me, it feels like period cramps times 10. It's like having the worst period of your life, so miserable, can't get out of bed, and mine lasts like exactly 6 hours. And like the second the 6 hour mark hits, I feel better, but my stomach will be extended for maybe 4 to 5 days, and it's like 7 to 10 pounds weight gain from inflammation. But I think like for me, like knowing the difference between being gluten and just being sick is like eating at home a lot and knowing that like I'm cooking for myself, so I know I'm not having any cross contact issues. And then when you go eat out and you do have an accident or someone accidentally like messes up your order or whatever, you feel a world of hurt. For me, like I feel a world of hurt, and I can just tell the difference between this is what my period feels like and this is what being gluten is like, because it's way worse.
For me, my body rejects it almost within 30 minutes. My body is like severe nausea. I will vomit violently for several hours until like I'll set up shop on the bathroom floor because I'll be vomiting. Like for some people, it comes out the other end. They'll have instant diarrhea. For me, it is vomiting until I almost feel like my body has rejected it all. And then I'm just really fatigued. Like I just ran a marathon and gave birth in the same day. And so I just like need to sleep and I need to rest and I need to rehydrate. I will also get a headache. And those symptoms of like stomach and knots, vomiting, headache can last like 48 to 72 hours. So, I try to put myself in situations where I'm not going to get cross contact like that or even full gluten consumption. Sometimes for me, full gluten consumption looks different than cross contact. So sometimes if I just get small amounts of cross contact, my lips will get really itchy and I'll have mouth sores. I'll get really itchy. My hands will get really itchy. That to me, I've kind of determined is cross contact versus full gluten consumption is like vomiting, abdominal stuff.
Yep. I am the other end, Lauren. So I'm glad that we can both be here to share. Oh, sometimes I wish I just unprocessed it quickly, but it processes, which I think sometimes leaves me out for like 2 weeks. I've had brain fog and kind of like diarrhea. That was a liquid. I got gluten from a liquid, and I feel like that processed very differently than solid or like cross contacts. Yeah, symptoms are not fun, and I've definitely over the past 2 years been learning different ones. Thankfully, it hasn't happened that often, but it's fun to learn a new one every once in a while.
I think it's important too, like when you feel like you're glutened, like the first step is trace back. Like, could I have gotten glutened? Did I eat out? Like, what are those things? I recently got a stomach bug, which is similar to my gluten symptoms. And I was like, but I literally ate at home the last 2 days, like only at home. So this is very unlikely, that I was glutened. And so I didn't have to have this fear of like, oh, that I'm glutened in my home, or maybe this product isn't gluten-free, or like any of those things, which I think people get too scared or like always think it's gluten when there are other things that can make you sick. I got a stomach bug because turned out my daughter had the stomach bug too. And so, recognizing that it isn't always gluten, and so figuring out like if you can trace it back to potential gluten, like make a note of that, of like, okay, these are my symptoms. And then the next time, if you can maybe trace it back to gluten, are those your symptoms too?
Yeah, Erin, I was in Australia last year in January, and they had like a stomach bug going around. I didn't know this at the time, but I got sick right after traveling. So there were so many points where I was not sure if I got glutened or not. And so I kept thinking, okay, I probably got glutened. It was very similar symptoms. It ended up being the stomach bug. And you just really have to listen to yourself. At like a day in, I was severely dehydrated, and we had to go to the hospital, and I had to get some IV. Not to scare anyone, it's okay to get sick in another country, but it actually wasn't a gluten exposure. So it's just interesting, like just knowing yourself. And I was able to trace things back. There was potentially one quesadilla, but I had asked all my questions. Usually it's safe. So you never know. You just gotta trust yourself.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just am seeing a lot of comments coming in of people being like, I'm asymptomatic, which I am so sorry that you're asymptomatic, because that's hard to, you could have damage in your intestine, but you don't know because you're asymptomatic. So my heart just goes out to all of you who are asymptomatic, because that makes it a little bit more challenging. Yeah.
I always tell people that are asymptomatic, because a lot of our clients that are asymptomatic have a lot more anxiety around food because they don't have the feedback. Whereas you could also argue somebody with symptoms has anxiety around food because they're scared of the symptoms, right? So it happens in both cases. But people that are asymptomatic, I say, like, let's do more follow-up blood work so that we can give you more confidence that you're doing the right things, to kind of have some more like data. Really, they have other things that like our stool tests that you kind of test for gluten. Those aren't great. I would definitely recommend blood work, but having kind of more follow-up, and then practice. Same thing as somebody that isn't gluten-free or that does have symptoms, is it just takes practice and asking those questions. But yeah, it does make it trickier. We're gonna have two more. Yeah.
Sorry, I saw a video on another separate platform of a girl who was like, I have celiac disease, and sometimes I just like have to eat my Pop-Tart. I like want a Pop-Tart, and she's like not advocating, but like kind of just talking about how she eats gluten, like because she wants it. And I was like offended. Like, please don't be sharing that on social media, that you're just like, you have celiac, but you can eat what you're eating gluten whenever you want. Because I'm like, that's a big no-no. Like, intentionally eating gluten is a big no-no. Like, if you're doing that, maybe you don't have the proper education, and you need to get the proper education, because frequently cheating on purpose is a big no-no, in my opinion.
But I have heard, you guys would be shocked. We will coordinate with a lot of gastroenterologists. I've had gastroenterologists tell me to my face that it is okay for a celiac patient to eat a piece of pizza once a week. That was one quote. Or to have regular cake on their birthday. Like, I've had doctors tell me this. And that's what they're telling their patients. So like when people, other doctors, like, I don't know, aren't educating their clients and are their patients enough. I've also had clients that come to me, and I've had to communicate with the doctors, where they're told they can never eat out again. They can never eat out at anybody else's house. They have to get rid of their oven. They have to do all these things. So it's both ends of the spectrum coming from medical professionals. which is why you'll see crazy stuff online. And so I want to wrap it up with everybody sharing like what is the craziest myth you've heard or the craziest DM you've gotten. You can share more than one if you have a few, but we'll go Lauren, Caitlin, Sarah, Janae.
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Okay, if anyone has anyone,
that toaster, that one, and I'm like, yeah, someone else go.
That's a wild one.
I will say, people tell me all the time that there's levels of celiac, that their level of celiac is less than my level of celiac.
Yep.
And I was going to say, there is no level, like all celiac is the same in terms of damage. Your symptoms can be different. You might not have any symptoms. Some people's symptoms might be worse, but that doesn't mean the level of celiac, like, oh, my symptoms
celiac.
They'll be like, my celiac's not as bad. It's just my level's low. It's like, it's not really that bad. And so I can eat a little bit. And that's not the case. Okay. All celiac is the same in terms of damage. Symptoms are different.
Yeah. There's different lab value, you know, like your TTG IgA might be at different ranges, but that doesn't dictate how bad your celiac is. So yeah, that's a good one.
As a travel one, I get a lot is the gluten in Europe is fine to eat, which is, yeah, you guys are all nodding. It's my least favorite one. And I think someone has posted some really good information about it, but basically the wheat strain in Europe is different. For people with gluten intolerances, they can eat it just fine. But if you have celiac disease, it is still wheat, it's still gluten. You cannot eat it if you go to Europe. So that's a big myth. Europe has, I'm generalizing, but they have good gluten-free options. I've been to a bunch of cities, so definitely go and have the gluten-free grains that don't have the gluten over in Europe.
That's the one I was going to say too. I get that so frequently because I'm Italian and everyone's like, just go to Italy. You can eat whatever you want there. And I'm like, actually, I can't. But that one. And then I feel like just doctors. I'm sorry. The misinformation from doctors is probably the hardest one that I get, because how do I rebuttal a doctor? Because I'm not even close to a doctor. So it's like when people come to me with these questions, I give them my honest feedback and my opinion from the doctor that I've seen and his knowledge and my own knowledge of what I've lived for the last 10 years. But it's really, really hard that doctors are giving misinformation.
Constantly.
And it's heartbreaking. So especially to kids, when Colby got diagnosed, they did it probably in the most awful way possible. They told her. Luckily, I was there, and luckily she's like amazing and can stand on her own. But I feel like they just need a lot more, like one of us need to go in and be like, okay, this is how you talk to people. This is how you tell them. This is what you tell them. Because yeah, doctors are really hard. It's a really tricky one. And I'm really sorry if you've had a doctor that didn't care about you, that didn't take the time to teach you about your celiac disease, to tell you the right things about your celiac disease. I was very fortunate. My doctor spent 2 hours with me explaining the ins and outs of celiac disease, to the point where I went cold turkey, went straight home and removed gluten out of my diet and took gluten out of everything. I was like, okay, I'm never touching this crap ever again, because I was so scared because of what he told me. And I'm grateful for that now, but having a platform and having people reach out to you, it's really sad what misinformation's out there. So
yeah, there's a ton of misinformation. Unfortunately, it does come from doctors. And I hear this all the time, is my doctor just told me to just go gluten-free and just Google it, which then they're just Googling misinformation. I think it's a blessing and a curse that some doctors won't tell them any more than that, because if they do, they might be the doctor that says you can have birthday cake or whatever, which just obviously is categorically false. I'll pull the data to show you, but we can all agree that is accurate. So yeah, the doctor thing is frustrating. I have also seen a lot of things that are easy to go viral, but it isn't, and it causes a lot more fear than it needs to. Like, are your tampons gluten-free? Is your drywall gluten-free? Is the glue in your envelope gluten-free? Like things that, really aren't a concern, that get a little bit overhyped. So
the drywall one, I saw that and I was like, who would be eating that?
Yeah. Or like, is the wood gluten-free? And I'm like, it's wood. Like just wood. And no one's eating,
Are you going to ask another question, or can I ask one?
Ask one, please.
Okay. This is something I get a lot, so I would love some different feedback, because it doesn't happen to me. But out of curiosity, and I'm sure maybe some other people feel this, if your husband or your loved one eats gluten and kisses you, is this an issue? For me, it's never been one, but I know a lot of people are scared of it, and I don't know. I always just give my opinion and my feedback. Obviously, if he has like something in his beard, or like he just ate it and it's still chewing it, like, but I've never had an issue from kissing my husband after he's eaten gluten. Has anybody else had something like that?
It's not an issue for me either, but I'm also not kissing like while I'm eating dinner or lunch. Like, we're not just like making out at the table, you know? And, like maybe if like you're talking about like a first date and you're thinking about kissing someone after, or like you're on a date with someone, and you know, anytime I got to eat, my husband does eat full gluten, likes to drink beer, and like he just knows like while he is actively drinking beer and eating gluten, he'll kiss me on the cheek, and then at the end, by the time we're done eating, he's had water and stuff. That has never been a problem. I have not once ever been glutened off a kiss.
Okay.
A lot of people say like they'll have their spouse brush their teeth, but if I'm like, by the time you go from the restaurant to your home to brush your teeth, like your mouth and saliva has gotten rid of gluten.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't that sounds gross anyway, you know? Like you would hang out with something that has gluten in their mouth, so.
Kiss while we're eating. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted some feedback because it's something I get asked quite often, and I wanted other people to maybe address it if someone else was feeling that same way.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah, were you gonna go?
You go.
I have a girlfriend who's like in the dating world right now, and she's going on lots of first and second dates, and her celiac causes her a lot of anxiety in this dating situation. And I feel like, I mean, all of us, like we've had celiac and our partners have been with us for a long time and they understand it. But somebody who's in the dating world right now, this could cause them a lot of stress and anxiety. And this girlfriend, she just kind of like talks about it at dinner, and she's just upfront with it. And she always keeps gum in her car, you know? And so she's like, I even like, sometimes if I like want to get down with this guy afterwards, I will literally have a little toothbrush and toothpaste in my car if I feel like it's happening right after dinner, or like, but if it's been several hours and maybe I offer them gum, like she's like, that works too, you know? So if you're in the dating world and you're like, oh, like we're all getting in the car, like, oh, do you want a piece of gum? Like, yeah, it's there, enough time has passed. And then, you know, if you want them to chew gum so that you're not kissing their beer mouth, you can, you know, you can do that. But I think that it depends on your comfort level and if you want to educate the person that you want to make out with afterwards.
Totally a comfort level thing. Because the other point is like you're kissing someone to enjoy it. So the whole time you're freaking out about gluten, whether or not you know it's safe, like if that's not going to be enjoyable, then have them do handstands and wash their mouth. You know, it doesn't really matter. But from like a data science standpoint, which I usually come at things from, it would be safe. So.
Yeah, and I dated with celiac all through college, and I never once asked a guy to use mouthwash or brush their teeth. Like after eating, if they like just drink beer, I'll be like, oh, or like eat something with gluten, I'll be like, can you drink some water? Just like
Nice.
if there's still food stuck in your teeth, I'm probably not going to kiss you. But you know, usually it's like you're getting the check and you're walking out, and you know, you have those minutes, and like I'm not waiting an hour when I was dating with celiac.
Yeah.
Just for a different perspective, my comfort level is over an hour, and KJ will brush his teeth. It is not that heavy of a lift. So just a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that's free. Everyone has their own. So that's why I want to.
I actually want to ask Sarah a question. With all of her traveling, out of all the countries you've been to, which country surprised you the most, like with gluten-free options?
Great question.
Not like might be hard to eat at, and then you were pleasantly surprised when you were there.
Italy is a great one. Don't eat the gluten there, but the gluten-free options were really great overall. The knowledge of celiac disease is very high. They actually test their entire population. They have a similar, I think it's 1% of Italians also have celiac disease. So if you go to the right restaurant, it's not like every restaurant you go to, just like in the US or any other country, they're not going to know everything, but Italy has been very overall. And Australia has also been great. Ooh.
Where?
The hardest.
Sorry, Sarah, we didn't hear you. We didn't
Where's the best place?
Last one.
Italy and where are the best places?
Australia.
Okay.
They just have a really good knowledge, and 0 ppm is their standard. So things cannot be labeled gluten-free if it's 0 ppm or anything with oats. The hardest country, I have been to a few different countries in Asia. I most recently just went to South Korea in Seoul, and I had a very difficult experience there. That's just my personal experience. Don't let it deter you from going. There was a dedicated gluten-free restaurant there, but just one. So definitely keep that in your back pocket. Be a little bit more of an experienced travel before you go there. The knowledge level was really not there. So being able or having to advocate for yourself and explain celiac disease all the time for every single meal in a different country with a different language is a lot harder. So
any other questions that we want to share? We want to ask each other. I have one more that I want to kind of wrap it up with is around dining out. Do you either like to stick with chain restaurants that have a gluten-free menu, or, and this is like currently at your journey, at where you're at with celiac, because I think everyone kind of has progression with it in some ways, but either a chain restaurant where they have a dedicated gluten-free menu. If so, what is that? Or do you like to just go to local things, try new places, that kind of stuff?
I like to try new places. I like to go like brand new, never been there before, have no idea what I might be able to eat, but we're going to figure it out. I do when I have decision fatigue, or I'm like, I don't even want to speak to a single person. I just want to go to a place. I know like I can ask one question, or like I can just confirm the practices. I have like my tried and true 5 places near my house that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there because I want to eat out. And I'm like sick and tired of having to explain celiac disease. But often I just like, oh, that place looks cool. Or someone told me like maybe they have like a cool gluten-free item. They just don't know if it can be made safely. So I'll either call, or like I just love to try new things and venture out. And then that way I can share it with others too. Like, oh, maybe you didn't know this place had that item. And so now like more people will go there, and then maybe that place stays in business longer because they can cater to celiac, and like more gluten-free people are now going to eat there.
I'm half and half. I stick to my places only because we have a large family, and trying to navigate outside of that sometimes feels difficult. Also, we only eat out once a week. We just do Friday night eat out night, and it used to be pizza and movie night, and now it's just like we eat out. But I feel like I stick to, but we don't go out, so we like bring it in, and that's more difficult. So I saw a comment about DoorDash. DoorDash can be a little bit more tricky to navigate with gluten-free for sure. So if I cannot for sure guarantee that the DoorDash can be gluten-free, I will actually just go and pick it up for our family. But I will stick to places like In-N-Out and Chick-fil-A or Costa Vida, where they're the chains. Now, if I'm going on a date with my husband, we love to try new places. But as a big whole family, that's just more difficult and complicated. So
I'm similar to you, Janae. I would say I'm 70-30. 70% of the time, I'm just sticking to my same places. 30%, I'll try if I've done my homework beforehand. But I'm kind of more of a creature of habit, and I like when I find a restaurant that I love and I find a meal that I love, I typically never veer from that. Like I will order the same thing from every restaurant that I love because I'm like, I love this. And if I try something new and I don't like it, I feel like I wasted my money because I didn't enjoy my meal. So I am like aubergine, I get the same thing every time I eat there. Like I never try anything new because I just have my favorite thing. And like that's the same with like all the restaurants that I eat at. I just kind of stick to my tried and true places.
Yeah, I don't know what my percentage is, but when we travel, probably close to 50-50. When we're traveling, we're usually trying new places. So when I'm in Chicago, I love my go-to places. It's way easier. Depends on my like fatigue level of explaining celiac. If I feel like I just need something easy, I'll go to one of my go-tos and have the vodka pasta. Absolutely love that. And if not, I'll feel like I love trying new places. I think that's another celiac disease that's so powerful is if there's a new gluten-free restaurant opening in town, Chicago is getting one soon. The celiac community, so excited about it. But if you're just kind of a foodie, like new restaurants open all the time, and I feel like you do get excited about it, but the level of excitement with a new gluten-free product or a new gluten-free restaurant is like so hype, and it's fun to get in on the energy.
I also think sometimes, which I've learned recently too, there is a lot more gluten-free at restaurants than you realize. And calling ahead and asking questions is way important, because a new restaurant opening or just a restaurant that you've never been to but your friends are going to, I've looked at the menu, I'm like, oh, it doesn't say gluten-free on the menu. So that will actually make me be like, in the past I would have been like, I'm not going. Well, now it's an easy phone call, like, hey, I noticed on your menu it doesn't say specifically, do you guys have a certain gluten-free menu? Can you make anything gluten-free? I'm coming in with friends, I have celiac disease. So again, advocating for yourself, but realizing if you look at a menu and it doesn't say gluten-free, don't make that your thing that you can't go, because most likely they actually probably do. And they might even have a completely separate menu. Online is not my friend. I cannot look at a menu online and think that I'm not going to like be able to eat there. So like, please don't think that you can not eat at a lot of places. There's a lot more that you definitely can eat at.
Yeah, I typically don't do, in the past, I did a ton of research beforehand, and it made me say no to a lot more restaurants, where now I'm like, let me go and figure it out in person, because then I can look at the menu, I can ask questions, but I'm confident enough to ask questions in person. Tonight we're going to a restaurant where we've been to it before, but the menu is brand new and they don't even have it online. I'm truly going in 100% blind. But you know, we've been there 5 times, so they know us. And so we'll kind of figure it out. So there are some instances where you can't do the research. For us personally, I'll say this, we don't eat out a ton for like fast food stuff. Even when we travel out, we might get like, we'll do more like snacks during the day or get Whole Foods hot bar or something, but we typically don't do much fast food. I would rather spend the money at like a nicer meal. And so usually nicer restaurants are better at gluten-free just because they're slower. The servers are trained a little bit more. They're like career servers. It's a chef, not a cook. They're like recipes that they're creating in-house. Whereas something like Olive Garden, they're not really cooking the sauces, they're getting shipped to them. And so you can look at the ingredients of what's in the Olive Garden dressing, but I would rather talk to the chef who made that dressing this morning and ask them what the ingredients are. And if he says it's soy sauce in there, I'm like, can you make it without soy sauce? And they're like, sure, I have all the other ingredients. So we personally try and like budget for higher or like nicer restaurants, because I find we have a better experience than eating more frequently at the chains. It's kind of our style. So that's that. Let's remind everyone where they can find us, because this has been so fun, and I think we just share so much good stuff on social media. So if you are watching this, we'll be sending out a replay as well. But everyone, again,
really quick.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I saw something in the message and I just
there's so many DMs. I'm like, I can't.
There's so many, but I saw this one and I wanted to address it because it happened to me and I wanted to throw it out there. So somebody said something to the effect of they're eating gluten-free and they thought maybe that they're getting gluten because of their spouse and because they still have symptoms. So they went to their doctor. So I was in a point in my life where I was continually getting sick frequently. And I was like, am I getting gluten this often? It was stomachache. It was the same type of feeling. I ended up going into the doctor, getting another scope of my small intestine to see if like my celiac was flaring up, if I was still getting gluten, if something was wrong. And I did all this testing. I ended up so if you've been pregnant and have children and had kids, I had varicose veins in my uterus. I never knew it was a thing. I had no idea that was something. It was causing the same type of symptoms and pain and feeling as if I was glutened. So kind of a random tangent, but like maybe if you're constantly sick all the time, and you think it's just gluten, like go in and
look at something else.
Yeah, go look and see if it's something else, because it may not just be your gluten, it may be something else. And it was a very easy surgery to remove them, and I've not been in pain ever since. So just throwing that out there. Now we can go back to who we are.
No, that's it. Too many people like think every symptom is related to gluten, or like if they're still having issues, they must be still getting gluten. And I hear that all the time. And we had a lot of questions about that. Like, I'm gluten-free, but I'm still having symptoms. And I tell people, definitely dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure you're gluten-free. But if you're just focusing on gluten, one, it's going to drive you crazy. And you can only be so gluten-free. You can't be more and more and more gluten-free. And if you're only focused on that, you're missing other things. We find other food sensitivities or allergies or varicose veins or pelvic floor issues or Crohn's, or, it could be something else. Not to scare anybody, but like, let's find out what it actually is. So,
and I'll say, like as someone who's had it for almost 17 years now, I probably get glutened maybe once every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
All of my other stomach issues are either my other poor food choices eating out, like I had something with dairy or something I'm intolerant to, and like I know exactly what this is going to do to me. It's going to make me bloated, or I had alcohol and like that makes me bloated, and or it's period related, or all my other stomach issues are something else. And like once every 2 to 3 years, it's actually gluten.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Yeah. Awesome. Where can we find y'all?
Okay, I'll go first again. Again, I am on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Gluten Free Grub. And my podcast is called The Good Gluten Free Grub Podcast.
You can find me on mostly Instagram, but I also have a TikTok, Eat Gluten Free AZ.
You can find me at also mostly Instagram, but also TikTok and YouTube, Celiac Sarah Explores.
I have all the channels. I'm only good at Instagram, but you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And my handle is Clean Monday Meals.
And I'm Erin. You can find me at the Celiac Space on, again, Instagram, kind of TikTok, and at the Celiac app. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's always like the best being in these circles. So thank you guys all for joining, ladies, as well as all of our guests. Have a good rest of your night and weekend, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.